If you haven't tried Game Up, then you are missing out. Imagine your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's way better than that. Each can is 110 calories, low carb, 4.9 ABV. It's a nice light drink that is not light on flavor. Game Up comes in fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Pick it up at drinkgameup.com or at your nearest liquor store.
Let's talk about Dark Side of the Ring, huh? How's that for a segue?
Could it get darker than Dark Side of the Ring, Season 5, Episode 2? Where are you with Buff Bagwell? Because I was a fan when he was Marcus Alexander Bagwell. I was less a fan during the later years. And then vaguely aware of what happened in his life after that. This wasn't a Dark Side of the Ring I was necessarily excited for, but I thought they did a good job with how they presented it.
So, man, I got to tell you, it's funny because we don't always agree, I think, on our wrestling. We don't really even talk about it, really, like what you like and what I like. I think there's things that we agree on. But, you know, you watch more Game Changer wrestling than I do. We go back and forth on Impact stuff. We both like MLW. I'm totally in agreement. I was a Marcus Alexander Bagwell fan. I liked him in the Global Wrestling Federation. He did the Handsome Stranger thing. And then he went over into WCW as just Marcus Bagwell. I didn't like the fact that he didn't get a big enough push. Eventually, they put him with Too Cold Scorpio and then the Patriot. And I loved all those tag teams. And then I thought when he became Buff, that it was, for me, it was just too over the top. I just didn't like it. The character didn't seem to click with me. As for this episode, I found it interesting. Found it very fascinating. I was interested to hear about the money that they had. You know, the father was a NASCAR driver and how tough Judy Bagwell was and how she was respected.
He was some kind of stock car driver, right? Was he in NASCAR?
Well, maybe just a stock car driver then. I don't know. I'm bad with you drive a car.
I just want to make that distinction because we could have NASCAR fans out there that are like, oh man, that man never made it off the Bush League circuit.
Right, don't mean it to me. Yeah, I know. I watch pro wrestling. You make fun of me.
But yeah, they went from a money situation to a non-money situation, and then eventually Buff's career kind of carried the family.
Yeah, and then they had that awful incident, which I know has been talked about in a few things, where him and the dad got into a fight and they were shooting at each other, and they ended up shooting part of like the dad's hand or something, where they had to get like a skin graft from part of his hip, he said, and they made up.
Buff shot his dad, and that was one of the wilder stories that might not have been known by everybody out there, but, you know, Darkseid did a good job of bringing it up.
How about,
you know, they led with it, which was wild, just like big business leading with Mercedes. They just come out the gate talking about the shooting.
How about that they actually included the Buff's mom shaves his balls story too? I mean,
I had heard about her shaving his back, but not that. If anything, like, I feel like the one sympathetic person in this might have been Buff's first wife.
Yeah.
Who, think about this lady. She strips to get him through wrestling, doesn't enjoy the stripping, and then eventually Buff cheats on her and the whole relationship breaks down. And then she still had hopes of getting back with him until she saw him as Buff the stuff.
Yeah, all the ex-wives truly loved this guy on some level. I thought it was very interesting, and Eric Bischoff said it, that, you know, despite all his problems, there's something very lovable about this guy. And I had just watched an A&E biography about Scott Hall, too, and it was very similar in the sense that there was all these problems with Scott, but all these guys generally just loved him. And it is interesting when you have people like that in your life, I guess, that, you know, have all these issues, but you can see there's just a generally good person there. And it's funny because, like you said, through the later years, as a character, I didn't really like Buff. But I have to say, despite the fact that this was dealing with somebody who had issues and everything, he came off like a very likable guy.
And another person that, in that similar Buff Bagwell vein that I had been a fan of earlier in WCW, and then they went through this wild body transformation, and I wasn't as into them, was Scott Steiner.
Right.
You know, entertaining, but like for me, that early Scott Steiner in like the bright singlets, him and Rick, you know, before that NWO really hit, was like, that was my time in WCW.
Yeah, no doubt. How about this, Joe? Two things. One, I agree with you again. I was a fan of the earlier Scott Steiner, the Steiner brothers, were amazing. He could do the Frankensteiner, the DDT off the ropes, the fallaway slam where he'd flip himself over. We talked about this before with the SATs when we had them on. I love Scott Steiner, but I was not a fan of later on as much Big Papa Pump. I still like Scott, but it wasn't my thing. However, it is very interesting that he borrowed from like superstar Billy Graham.